But they say there's been 2.57 million shots given, so there's some of them still waiting on their second shot, looks like.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This says we're at 23.7% vaccinated.
Well, there's just a little over 4 million in the state, so I guess, sounds like he's trying to get it above 50% before he releases those restrictions. Hey, Representative Thomas, how are you doing?
I am blessed, Jason. How are y'all? Good to see you.
We're good to see you. It looks like, are you in Frankfurt?
I am. Yeah, I had to be up here anyway, and I thought, well, I was going to start heading home, and I thought I'll sit in with y'all for a little bit before I start driving back.
Well, listen, I thought I recognized that office environment behind you. I appreciate you doing that for us.
Yes, sir.
Always enjoy hearing from you. I think it seems like things ended up pretty well. I know a lot of good things got passed there in the last few days, and I'm actually going to talk about a couple of those during my report, especially with the funding for water and sewer, and of course the broadband. But I tell you that water and sewer funding could really make some transformative differences for some of our communities. So that's gonna be really good.
Well, we freed up some this year, and we'll free up some more probably in next budget too. So as you know, there's $500 million set aside, and we froze up or unfroze 250 million. So hopefully they'll help get some projects started, and then 300 million towards broadband can't hurt, can it?
Oh no, and especially and from what I understand, I mean, it's hard trying to keep your thumb on all the different opportunities that are out there, but I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for broadband funding coming down the pipe. So it's sort of I'm telling our folks, hey, let's just wait and see how all this plays out, because there may be more than one opportunity to look at for some of these projects.
Right.
But I know really before me and you both got in this business, the legislature used to, before funding got really tight, used to put a lot of money toward water and sewer projects every budget session. And of course that was always good, but I know tight budgets slowed that down just a little bit, but this is definitely going to be a huge help.
You there, Jason?
Yes, sir. Sure. It's good to see you, Scott.
How are you?
Man, I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Doing good.
Good deal.
Trying to get all. I spent a half a day at AT&T the other day trying to get this thing figured out where I could get it on there and changing old passwords and everything else. We finally got it figured out.
I tell you what, anymore, there's a lot easier things you can do than changing passwords. And golly, had to change an email address the other day, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to do that or not. I mean, that's
what started the whole problem with this phone. It was the one that I had when I was mayor, and it was set up as Guthrie Mayor and had a different passcode. And then we swapped it out. They give it to me as a lovely parting gift, and I had to they set it up, but every time I'd try to get to an app or something, it was coming up under Guthrie Mayor rather than Scott Marshall. And so it took the girl about 30 minutes to finally figure it out, but we got it worked out.
Well, good. I'm glad that's the case. Mr. Chairman, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Jason. Thank you very much. Good to see everybody's smiling faces.
On the cover of the Rolling Stones, right?
Jason, we're about ready to go.
Yeah. Let's give it just a couple of more minutes. We've got some folks logging in. Let's give it just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Sherry, if you could put the the agenda login information in the chat like we always do.
Yes, sir, it's there. Can you see it?
No, ma'am.
Okay, let me send it again. I sent it to everybody, but let me do it one more time. Let me know if you see it.
Yeah, it's there now.
Okay, thank you.
Jason Hassert, sure is good to see you on here. Glad to have you back.
It's very good to be back. I appreciate everyone's thoughts and prayers.
I know you had a lot of them going up from this group, so.
I count it all and attribute it all to my recovery. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should be we should be ready to go. If you haven't already, you can access the board agenda, the electronic board agenda, through a link that has been placed in your chat box. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, feel free to go ahead and do that now. But Mr. Chairman, I think we're good to go ahead and get started.
All right, I'll go ahead then and call the meeting to order of the Penny Ryle Area Development District for April the 12th, 2021. And to start our meeting, we will be led in our Pledge of Allegiance by City Administrator of Cadiz, Mr. Brian Ahart, followed by our invocation that will be led by Mayor Chris Phelps of Morton's Gap. So if everyone would, Sherry's provided our flag, so we'll go ahead and get that started.
Hey guys, let's all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father God, we come to you now and we thank you for this opportunity to meet, even though virtually. Lord, please guide us in our decisions. And Lord, while we appreciate the opportunity of meeting technologically, we look forward to the day that we can meet again in person. And Lord, let that day come in a swift but careful manner. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. First item of business on our agenda is approval of our minutes. And as Jason said, Sherry provided the link for those if you hadn't had a chance to take a look at them before. But at this time, I would entertain a motion regarding the minutes as to approval.
I'll make that motion.
All
I
right,
can second.
okay. Sherry, did you get who that was? I didn't catch it.
I think it was
Lori.
Lori.
Yeah, it's Lori.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Scott, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. All right, we've got a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Anyone opposed to the approval of these minutes signify by saying aye. All right, there being none, the minutes will be approved as presented. Next item of business is our financial report. Ms. Chrissy.
Okay, for the March board financial, we should be at 75% to be in line with the budget. Overall, we're at 61.53% of the administrative budget as of 3/31/21, and all line items are currently within budget.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions regarding the financial report? All right, do I have a motion to approve the financial report as presented?
Steve Tribble makes a motion.
Jack
Thank you,
Whitfield,
sir.
second.
Thank you, Judge Whitfield, seconded. Any further questions or comments? All right. Is anyone opposed to the approval of the financial report as presented? If so, signify by saying aye. There being no opposed or opposition, we'll go ahead and approve the financial report as presented. Next on our agenda is our guest speaker for the day. And we're pleased again to have with us Secretary of State Michael Adams. I know he's definitely no stranger to us virtually. He's probably a little bit of a stranger in person though, because of the way things are going. And we look forward to the day we can all be together, just as Mayor Phelps indicated in his invocation. But Secretary Adams is a native of Paducah. He's Kentucky's 86th Secretary of State and the 77th person to serve in that role. Inaugurated as Secretary of State on January 6, 2020, Secretary Adams first pushed his highest legislative priority, Kentucky's first photo ID to vote law, through the General Assembly, then pivoted right into saving the primary and general elections from all the problems that befell the other states during the COVID-19 pandemic. His work in making it easy to vote and hard to cheat, and taking Kentucky from the back of the pack to a national leader in election administration in mere months has earned him praise not only throughout the Commonwealth, but also throughout the United States of America. Michael's happily married to Christina, and they are the proud parents of Lucia. So Secretary Adams, if you would.
Well, thank you, Judge. Good to see you again, and good to see all of you again. I share the wish to do this in person as soon as possible. I've only been out to Western Kentucky for one public event in the last 6 months. I was in Madisonville about 2 weeks ago, and so relieved to see folks again in person, and look forward to that here pretty soon for all of us. I'm really pleased that our election in our primary election in June and our general election in November went so smoothly. Expectations were low. We saw a lot of problems in other states, whether it was people being disenfranchised by polling sites closing on short notice, people getting COVID, people getting sick, spikes in cases, concerns about irregularities. You saw all sorts of problems in other states. I'm really pleased that we didn't have those problems here in Kentucky. And I want to thank especially our county clerks of both parties who really worked together very efficiently to make this election go as smoothly as it possibly could in the face of some real challenges, including a total reworking of the election process to make sure that we could have social distancing in a pandemic. So all credit to them for their great work. There were some things that we did last year that made a lot of sense for a pandemic. We had to have 3 weeks, in my estimation, were necessary to vote in November to make sure that we could keep people spaced apart and avoid crowds. We also had to expand remote voting for people who were at risk from COVID-19 based on age or health condition. And those things made a lot of sense. But there were some things that actually made sense on a permanent basis, even in a non-pandemic election. And so I spent several months listening, working with county clerks, getting their perspective. I spoke to 115 county clerks actually all over the state, Democrats and Republicans, urban and rural, getting their thoughts on what worked well, what didn't, what should we keep, what should we not keep, and then put together a task force of legislators and others, both members of both parties, to come up with what would be a good permanent improvement to our system. The election system that I inherited last year, that we're all used to have voting in, dates from 1891, literally the horse and buggy era, before automobiles, before electricity and homes, decades before we even had those things. We had the Kentucky Election Code, and we were way overdue for a review of that code and an updating. The whole reason we have a legislature, of course, is on an annual basis for them to take a look and see what we need to modernize. And we were overdue to modernize our election system. So we took several things that worked well last year and kept those on a permanent basis. And we also added some additional improvements. And very quickly, I'll walk through those and then, of course, take any questions or any feedback that any of you have. So the first thing that we thought we should keep was early voting. Not weeks of it. We needed weeks of early voting to make sure we avoided crowds on election day that could have gotten people sick. In other states, they were voting until literally 2 in the morning in some places. We didn't want that for our people. We had to expand voting days. But obviously, I don't favor weeks and weeks of voting in every election. That's too expensive for our counties. It's not really fair to the candidates either. It's a pretty difficult environment to run for office in. But I did think a few days more of in-person voting made a lot of sense. We saw a big increase the last 3 or so days of the early voting period. That's when people make up their minds. That's when they want to go vote. We found that it was actually fairly cost efficient to expand voting those few days. We didn't run up big bills for our counties, but we really increased access to the ballot and ended up with the highest turnout we've ever had in a Kentucky election, over 2 million voters. I thought a good compromise between what we did last year and what we normally do was to add 3 days of early voting, including a Saturday. That's a real game changer for working people, like my family in Western Kentucky. So we included 3 days of early voting. A lot of things we did last year increased access, but also security at the same time. This actually had not occurred to me, but I've got a bipartisan task force of prosecutors, of law enforcement that came together to monitor the election last year. And after the election, we met. And again, this hadn't occurred to me, but it makes sense. The career prosecutors who for a living fight election fraud told me that one of the reasons they believed we had a more secure election, an election with fewer allegations of improprieties than we've ever had in Kentucky before, is that we had the voting spread out over several days. That makes it harder to run a vote buying operation or to commit some other sort of fraud because it's not happening in the chaos of one day and 12 hours. It's spread over time. So they actually thought that it made the election more secure as well as more accessible. So we've kept that in the legislation that we passed on a bipartisan basis and was signed by the governor last week. The next thing we added was, this is permissive, not mandatory, but permissive language allowing your counties to have countywide vote centers. Vote suppression is a real thing. It doesn't typically happen in the way that you hear about in politics where people are trying to stop others from voting in an intentional way, and it's really oversold. But what really happens is normal people, people unlike maybe us who are pretty regular voters, most folks don't vote every election. My family don't. They vote maybe once every 2 or every 4 years. They care about certain elections more than others, and then they don't know their precinct. It's changed, or they forgot, or they just don't know. And people go to vote at their precinct and they get turned away because they're in the wrong precinct. So with a countywide vote center, any voter in that county can vote there without being turned away. But we have protocols in place to prevent someone from double voting. They can't vote at the precinct and then the vote center or vice versa, because through the utilization of e-poll books, we know in real time if somebody has voted, so they can't get away with a double vote. And by the way, the nice thing about the vote centers, I think, for the counties is it enables them to have a quicker throughput of voters, which means shorter lines for the voters, but also fewer poll workers and fewer machines needed to process the same number of voters, which hopefully will balance the cost of 3 days of early voting. We think it will. Next, the absentee ballot request and tracking portal. This is something else that increases both access and security. It's easier for the voter to go online, prove identity with photo ID, and get an absentee ballot mailed if they qualify to vote absentee. It's easier for the voter that way than to mail a letter to the county clerk, get an application back, fill it out, mail in the application, wait for that to come back with the ballot. It's more efficient. It saves the clerk's time and money, saves the voter time for the ballot application to go back and forth. But it also increases our security. Now we actually verify the voter through ID. And also the voter can track her ballot 24 hours a day electronically online and see where it is in the system. It also lets the clerk, also lets me here in the state capitol track these ballots and make sure they're not lost or stolen. So again, access and security being enhanced at the same time. Fourth, the cure process. Before I came to office in the last federal election, 7.5% of the absentee ballots were literally thrown in the garbage. And the voters never notified that there was a problem because the voter didn't sign in the right spot or her signature changed between when she registered to vote 20, 30, 40, even 50 years ago and today. Well, now instead of just throwing those in the garbage, this law keeps permanent our process of requiring the clerks to ask the voter, hey, was this you? Number one, that enfranchises people. It gives them a chance to prove their identity with a photo ID so we can count that ballot. But number two, it helps us track down potential vote fraud if someone didn't actually sign that absentee ballot envelope. So again, here too, we're improving access and security at the same time. A few more things in this bill, more on the security side. One is we prohibited and penalized ballot harvesting. Ballot harvesting has never been allowed by Kentucky law. Our law has said the voter must return the ballot, but in practice, I had no way to ever enforce that. We fixed that. We closed that loophole. Now we actually make it a felony to ballot harvest in Kentucky. If there is one way that vote fraud can lead to a stolen election, it's from ballot harvesting. And don't take it from me, take it from the North Carolina State Board of Elections. Just 2 years ago, they had to throw out an election for US Congress because of ballot harvesting. There was so much fraud in that election, they couldn't tell who actually won the election the prior November. And so they threw it out and had to have a special election for Congress. This is not ancient history. This is 2 years ago. I don't want that to ever happen in Kentucky. So now we've plugged that loophole. Next, we have transitioned the state toward universal paper ballots. When I took office last year, we had 29 counties that had no capacity for paper ballot to be processed. They were all electronic. I went out and procured federal funds to help counties match their funds and be able to get upgraded equipment. Now all 120 counties have at least some machines that can process a paper ballot. If there's any one issue I found that Democrats and Republicans agree on, it's they want to vote on a piece of paper. They like the speed of the quick count, but the security of a paper trail. So this is not a mandate telling you all to go out and buy new equipment, but it is a mandate saying that when you choose on your own timetable to buy new equipment, we want you to buy paper ballot equipment, not electronic ballot equipment. We found that in the counties that had both options, the voters tended to wait in line for a paper ballot instead of going right up to the electronic machine. You don't have to believe in conspiracy theories from the left or the right about the machines being hacked and the numbers changed. I don't, but I do think it's a lot easier to conduct a recount when you've actually got ballots you can actually count. So this sailed through in this bill as well. The last major improvement is I asked for increased authority to maintain our voter rolls. This is a campaign promise for me. I've ran on this issue. I said that when I ran, that we had people on our rolls who had moved away, passed away, or been put away, and yet they persisted on our rolls and were never taken off. We've had months, I've been here, that we've taken more dead voters off the rolls than added live voters, several months like that. We've been very vigilant and diligent about taking people off the rolls by the tens of thousands. We're not mass purging people on a political basis. We're verifying everything with the Bashir administration or with other states, but we found a loophole. in our law. The loophole basically provided that I'm not allowed to take people off our rolls who are alive, even if they're voting in some other state. They're able to double vote. They're able to vote in some other state and our state simultaneously because they used to live here and they moved. Every week I get mail from the secretaries of state of Utah and South Dakota and New Hampshire. And they send me a list that has the people that month or that week who moved into that state and registered to vote that are still on our rolls. And they tell me, you should take these folks off. And I say, well, thanks, but I can't. I have to get written permission. This actually keeps that loophole, so now I don't have to go out and get written permission from people who are already voting in some other state. That's the permission that's now sufficient. So I'm really proud of all of these things. I think they're going to make a real difference. They're going to keep the lines short or make them shorter. They're going to save money. They're going to enhance public confidence in our system across the political spectrum. They're going to make our elections more secure. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention. If you have any questions or any comments, I'm all ears. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, I just want to say thank you for your time, taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. You know, it's been really nice seeing Kentucky getting a lot of positive press on the national level regarding this legislation that was recently passed. And I definitely appreciate your leadership on this topic. And I also want to say that in my short time in this business, I've never seen a Secretary of State so involved at the local level. And I know that you've attended our board meetings in the past. You've been at, quite frankly, every West Kentucky Coalition meeting, I believe. And as you've already mentioned, you've spoken at local events. So I just wanted to say thank you for your involvement in local government.
Well, thank you. That's extremely gracious. I've got a soft spot in my heart for Western Kentucky. Anything I can do for Western Kentucky, I'll do it.
Secretary Adams.
Yes, ma'am. Hi, Representative.
Hi. I've had questions about the boxes, the ballot boxes, security of those. Can you just maybe run over that a little quickly so people can be reassured that those are going to be secure?
Sure. So one thing I didn't mention, but actually is a pretty significant development, is for the first time in the Kentucky election last year, we permitted the use of drop boxes for voters to drop their absentee ballots. What we found is a lot of voters didn't trust the postal system. They either had a political distrust of it, or they just thought that they were losing too much mail. They didn't want to trust their absentee ballot to the mail system. They wanted to hand deliver it. And we thought that made a lot of sense. We spent several $100,000 buying drop boxes for our county clerks to put out there. And this actually net saved money because it cut down on the postage costs of all of these absentee ballots being returned. But it also gave the voters a sense of security. They were hand delivering their ballot, sort of like waiting in line on election day, only they didn't have to wait in line. So we found that although in other states the drop boxes were controversial, they were not here. Republicans liked them, Democrats liked them. Obviously, we can't just throw these random boxes out on the street and have people voting in them. We got to have security protocols. So as part of the requirement to get a drop box and use a drop box, there are certain minimum security requirements. They have to be under continuous surveillance. They can be live surveillance. They can be a 24-hour video surveillance. When we tried the drop boxes at first, back in the primary, we required them to be in the clerk's offices, in the voting centers utilized by the county clerk's government buildings. And that was fine, except the problem was it didn't really give us much of an advantage of just having people drop off the ballot with the clerk. The whole point of the drop box was to try to get some of that movement of people away from crowding. But we also found that it increased access and increased convenience to have them at some other locations around the county. So we're going to let the county clerks and the local boards of elections make these decisions about how many of these they want, as long as they meet certain bare minimum security requirements, which is that they're capable of 24-hour surveillance of the drop boxes.
Hey, Secretary Adams, this is Representative Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you speaking with us today. On some of these hubs, I know they were very convenient for people to come in and be able to vote in what precinct that they normally, would, and that was accessible. How about the posting on it though? Because for us as candidates, it was always nice to know what precincts we won and lost and things like that. Is that something that they will eventually be able, those votes will be tallied back at the precinct that you actually live in?
Yes, absolutely. The decision whether or not to code it that way, so you had precinct level returns, is a decision made at the local level in 2020. I know for a fact that the clerks are capable of doing it because in Jefferson County, where I currently live, our county clerk came out with precinct level data, but some county clerks didn't. So we made a point specifically in House Bill 574 to require that data be processed at the precinct specific level. And so we actually don't allow the county clerk and the county board of elections to have a consolidated location for countywide voting unless they are capable with the particular machines they're using to provide the candidates and anybody else precinct level data. We thought that was really important.
All right. Any other questions for Secretary Adams? Okay, hearing none. Secretary Adams, I too want to reiterate my thanks for you joining us today and for your proactive approach on this elections reform. I think it's going to be extremely beneficial for our counties, especially when we look at our expenses in regards to running elections. And we really appreciate your help and work on that, along with all our legislative representatives as well.
Well, thanks so much. I want to thank Representatives Prunty and Thomas for working with us and getting this bill passed. It's the biggest reform we've had in our system since 1891, and we have a lot to be proud of. And we did it across party lines too. That's really unique these days.
All right. All right. Very good. Thank you, sir. I know you've probably got more important things to get onto for your day, so you're welcome to join the rest of our meeting or go ahead and take off.
I've got a meeting starting in a few minutes, but thanks so much. Good to see you all again. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on then to our federal and state reports. And first on the agenda is Ms. Morgan Albee with Senator McConnell's office. Morgan?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Well, first, I want to say that it's really good to see Jason Hassard back. I'm really glad to see him back and doing a lot better. I certainly sent some prayers to him. Just a brief update. Senator McConnell spent the last 2 weeks of recess traveling around the state, mostly visiting hospitals and discussing the vaccination effort. He made a couple of stops here in West Kentucky, including one in the Pennyrile. He had a good visit at Baptist Health Madisonville last Wednesday, and he was also over in Paducah at the Baptist Health Hospital there as well. The only other item I really want to mention is letters of support for federal grant applications. I know I've heard from a few of you recently requesting letters of support, and so I just wanted to reiterate for everyone that our office is happy to provide those letters of support for competitive direct federal grants. Just let me know if you ever have any requests or questions. Probably the easiest way to make those requests is just to email me a brief summary of the application so I can put you in touch with our DC staff, but we're happy to help with those where we can. That's all I have today, but thanks again for having me.
All right, thank you, Morgan. Anyone have any questions for Morgan? Okay, there being none, we'll move on then. And Mr. Jason Hassard, I know everyone has expressed their gratitude in seeing you back with us and being healthy again. And I certainly want to reiterate that as well. And glad to have you here with us again, representing Senator Paul.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you to Morgan and everyone else for their thoughts and prayers. It's good to be back. Took 3 months out of my life to start the year, so I'm really looking forward to getting back in touch with everyone. And if there's anything happening in your communities that you need help with from Senator Paul, please give me a call, and I'd like to hear the update. Senator Paul has a Service Academy virtual meeting coming up on April 20th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I've sent an email to Sherry with that flyer. We just want to get the word out to local high schools for any students that are interested in the Service Academy. It's just an informative meeting just to let them know the steps they need to take to apply to the academies. It's definitely one of the best educations you can get in the country. Also, Senator Paul wanted to let everyone know about two things that are coming out grant-wise. He is a member of the Small Business Committee in the Senate. The first one is the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant, and that's a grant to help anyone that is an entertainment or a theater. I can think of the Alhambra Theater here in Hopkinsville, possibly the Madisonville Fine Arts Center, anything like that in this area. There's money available, and Senator Paul would be happy to help anyone get that money. Also, there will be money becoming available for restaurant owners to get back on their feet, and that'll come through the money that was just recently passed by the Congress for the COVID relief. So those two things, as we get additional information, I'll send that to Jason and Sherry to send out to you. Senator Paul is always in favor of balancing the budget and spending less, but if the money's available, he wants to see it come here to Kentucky and to the PeADD region. So that is what I have for today. And again, it's really good to be back, and I look forward to catching up with everyone soon.
Anybody, any questions for Jason? All right, thanks again, Jason, and welcome back. We'll move on then to Miss Amelia Wilson of Congressman Comer's office.
Yes, this week, Congressman Comer is actually spending some time at the border, seeing the crisis that's developing. He really is leading a delegation there, a meeting with ranchers, with Border Patrol officials, and also touring migrant facilities. So he knows this crisis is definitely heartbreaking all around, particularly for the children, but he is committed to securing the border, and he wants everyone to be dealt with in a humanitarian way. On the infrastructure side, there's been a lot of talk in Washington of a new infrastructure package. And of course, Congressman Comer supports investing in infrastructure, but he also believes that any infrastructure package should be focused on roads, bridges, and of course, rural broadband, which we hear a lot of in our office. And he hopes to see a bipartisan ship on this issue. On federal spending, I know that there's been a lot of questions that we've had about new federal money coming down from the recently passed stimulus bill. And so that's something that if our office, can be of help, don't hesitate to get a hold of us, and we'll get you some, or we'll try to get you some answers on priorities, of course, for Congressman Comer moving forward. He wants to reopen the economy, of course, and distribute vaccines, and also be a bipartisan action on issues like infrastructure. So just like Morgan said, if there's ever any time that our office can write letters or be of help on any kind of grant or anything you're writing, please let us know. So thank you, Judge.
You're welcome, Amelia. Anyone have any questions for Amelia? All right, Amelia, glad to have you with us again today as well. Glad your health is getting better, and we continue to pray for you as well as you go through your issues.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Representative Thomas, you want to share a few words?
Sure. Well, I appreciate being here. It's been a while. I'm getting a little worried about Steve Tribble. If we keep doing this virtually, he's missing a lot of meals. He might waste away there. So, but we sine died at the end of the month, end of March, and we got a lot done in a 30-day session. Usually, those you don't get as much as accomplished, but we're able to pass a one-year budget to get us to next year, where we'll work on our biennial budget. And just got a report a second ago, and y'all will probably be getting it on your inboxes from the general fund and road fund receipts that actually March of this year went up about 9% of the general fund from over last year. Of course, Last year, we were dealing with the onsets of COVID immediately, but the road fund was actually up 4.1%. I wish we could have gotten it all the way through this year. The road funds do need some help. It's going to be bad, I think, when the federal government puts out something on their infrastructure and then we don't have the money to be able to pull down funds. And I know we've all been driving these roads. I know that's a big concern to this whole board, and hopefully it's something we can get all the way through next year. But there's a couple other things we did the very last day. It was funny. My seatmate, Representative Richard Heath, stood up, and when he sat back down, I looked over him and said, "Congratulations, you just proposed a bill that spent almost $1 billion." He said, "Yeah, that was the biggest one he's ever carried." But some of it was really good. We took, I think, $525 million and paid down some of our unemployment debt. So those interest bills won't be incurring. We put $300 million into broadband, and then we released $250 million towards infrastructure. And I'm going to let Jason Vincent, he's going to speak on that in a bit. So I'm not going to steal his thunder, but overall, it was a good session. We passed quite a bit of legislation, and once again, anyone reach out to me if you need anything for next year.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone have any questions for Representative Thomas? All right, hopefully we can get the Senate a little better educated next year and get that transportation bill put through, as you mentioned. Representative Prunty, you want to share a few words?
Sure, appreciate the opportunity. Always good to be with you all. In addition to what Representative Thomas reported, we did pass some liability reforms to try to protect businesses against, I'm unmuted, against some liability reforms in Senate Bill 5 to protect owners that followed government guidance, but does not provide immunity for bad actors. So took a while to get that balance in the bill. So it was kind of late coming to the floor for a vote. Part of what the federal funds that we got with the American Rescue Plan, we only allocated 1.36 billion out of a 2.6 billion allocation. We may have to go back in and do the rest of it, but included in that was 250 million for water and wastewater projects. And I know Hopkins County is slated, has an allocation of over 5 million, and Muhlenberg County has an allocation of over 3 million. And I've got the list here. If any other counties want to know what they were, you may have already seen it. Y'all may have access to it. If you don't, I'll be glad to put it in the chat box if you want to tell me which counties want to know. We overrode 26 out of 27 vetoes. The only veto we didn't override was it had election implications that has to do with Senate Bill 63, where the machines were connected to the internet. We didn't want fraud through the internet, so that has to have some more work. So hopefully we'll get that straightened out before the next time. And we did a lot of other things. Again, as Representative Thomas said, that we really got a lot of work done. The major thing, another major thing, was the infusion of money into the broadband expansion and trying to get the last mile, trying to get to rural Kentucky, to unserved and underserved, to try to create some competition for those companies that are already out there that aren't really performing up to par, to give people the best quality service. Became so evident during the pandemic of the needs. So those are the major over highlights of the last few days. And again, I'll be glad to do anything that anybody needs as well. So thanks again for letting me be here.
Absolutely. Anyone have any questions for Representative Prunty? All right, there being none, I believe I saw Representative Imes with us as well. Representative Imes, would you like to share a few words?
Just a few, Jason. I just appreciate you all letting me come on here. I appreciate all the work that you all do very much. I think Representative Prunty and Representative Thomas have covered a lot. I lost Melinda there for a little while, but one of the things I was so proud of was some of our pro-life bills that we passed. And I too, I'm open for any questions if you all have any. If I don't have them, I'll look for them. Thank you all again.
Anyone have any questions for Representative Irons? All right, thank you. Did we miss anyone with our state or federal legislative representation? Okay. All right, then we'll move on to our Chief District Engineer for Kentucky Transportation Cabinet District 2, Ms. Denitra Henderson. You with us, Denitra?
I don't think she's on, Judge.
You're not on? Okay.
Excuse me,
Doug?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
there you go. Were you moving to me next?
I certainly was.
Well, good. I didn't mean to intervene, but I was going to let you know Denitra couldn't make it today. So I was going to try to catch you up on some things there. Real quickly, I must apologize. This is a strange year for us in our preparation for projections on what kind of funds there could be. As we all know, it takes a while to generate those projections. We started in February. In February, there was some optimism, as Representative Walker said, that perhaps the motor fuel tax might pass, and we projected numbers based upon that optimism. As the legislature is now convened, or adjourned, and we have final budget numbers, those that may have been shared with you are no longer accurate, and there are now final budget numbers available. District personnel should be coming back to your fiscal courts to update you on those and get those proper amounts in the minutes. If you'd like, you're free to contact me. I'll share all the information that I have with you. I will share with you that, much as, again, to reiterate what Representative Walker said, the projections are up about 5%. They are based upon an anticipated increased use in motor fuel usage. As he said, we saw in March. We anticipate that we will see that throughout the year as we see some economic recovery nationally and certainly locally. So based upon increased fuel sales, we do see an increase in the overall budget of around 5%. Again, for specific numbers, you can contact your district personnel or myself. If you have any questions about any of the programs that Rural Roads and Municipal Aid participates in, please feel free to contact me. Or if you've got state or federal issues, Denitra, and or in Arthur's case, I believe Joe Plunk would help him. So if not any questions, I'll step back.
All right. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll move on then as Mr. Elton Thomas with Governor's Office, Department for Local Government. Is he with us today, Jason? No?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. Anyone we may have missed with our other regional offices? All right, then we'll move right on then to our reports. And Miss Jill Collins with our Area Agency on Aging Independent Living. Jill?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I do have several updates, so we'll try to move through these fairly quickly. I want to begin with our senior center reopening. There are discussions happening now at the state level regarding reopening of our senior centers and what that may look like. There currently has been a work group formed, and we have one staff member from the Area Agency on Aging and 2 senior center staff members from each region that are participating on that work group. Right now, we've had one meeting with the work group and have another meeting planned later this week, but the projected reopening date is July 1. But I do think there's quite a bit of work that needs to happen prior to that date. And after I give my update, Amanda Stokes is going to give a little bit more detail on what those discussions are going to look like. Regarding our EVV process, the electronic visit verification with our home and community-based waiver participant directed services program, the go live date for the mandated use of that data system is currently on pause due to some system performance and function issues that are being corrected. The Penny Route Area Development District, we made the decision just to keep moving forward with that and onboarding all of our employees. And we are able to have successful billings out of that system at this point, and all of our trainings have taken place with all of those employees on how to adequately use the system. So when a new date has been set for the mandatory use of that, we will pass that along to the board. That impacts the entire state and all the participant directed services employees that participate under the home and community-based waiver. In your packet, you will see just a brief summary on EVV and on the home and community-based waiver and our veterans directed care program. That just gives you some updated client numbers so you can see what our caseloads are looking like at this point. Also, the AAA staff, we've been able to complete the on-site monitoring of all of our senior centers for the year. We waited until later in the year to do that. We were able to complete that in person, social distance and with a mask, but we have completed all the monitoring for our senior centers. You will also find in your packet a copy of the wait list broken down by county as of April the 5th. If anyone has any questions regarding that wait list for your county, you can let myself or Amanda Stokes know, and we can help you with that question. Also, our long-term care ombudsman program is beginning to make more regular visits within the facilities on a more regular basis. So we are starting to see some of those visits open back up in our long-term care facilities. And there is also a handout in your packet regarding what those facility visits can look like and what those CDC and CMS guidelines are. And at this time, I want to ask Amanda Stokes, our in-home service manager and aging planner, to provide a little bit more of an update on our COVID meal clients and our senior center reopening work group. So Amanda, if you're available.
Thank you, Jill. Good afternoon, everyone. There is an update in the packet for you. It's a meal count delivery sheet. It's broken down by our congregate meals, our regular state and federally funded meals, emergency meals, and our temporary meals for those clients during the COVID pandemic. From March the 16th of 2020 to March the 19th of 2021, we've provided 280,425 meals. Right now, we are currently averaging over 1,200 hot meals per day across the region, and we're currently serving around 1,376 clients through those meal services. If anyone has specific needs about knowing the meal count for just your county versus the region, if you'll let me know, I'd be happy to break that down for you by county. In regards to our transition plan and our temporary COVID funded meal clients, we have been instructed by Dale to start a transition plan where we are trying to evaluate and determine who is truly eligible to continue receiving a home delivered meal and who needs to be transitioned to the curbside pickup meals at the senior centers. Starting this week, a letter will go out to approximately 820 current COVID home delivered meal clients, letting them know about this transition process. It also gives them information about curbside pickup with the senior centers, locations, telephone numbers, and the dates and times available for pickup. And it also gives them the opportunity to self-identify based on their circumstances, whether they're sheltering in place at home, if they're able to drive and they are comfortable going to the senior center to pick up a meal, if there's someone in the home that's able to prepare a meal for them, whatever their circumstances are, it gives them the opportunity to self-identify for that. We'll also be evaluating the information that we previously collected from all of those 820 plus clients. We did ask a lot of questions when we did the initial screening about things like bathing, dressing, grooming, mobility, meal prep, shopping, homemaking, transportation, money management, medication management, things like that. So we do have a pretty good picture of some of those clients and their needs. We also, in our transition plan that has been approved by the state, the Department for Aging and Independent Living, We also talked about partnering with PACs in that process of evaluating all of those clients, because those home delivered meal staff have a good relationship with those clients, and they're aware of some of those circumstances that they're seeing on a daily basis. So we will be working with them to work our way through all 820 plus clients. And the goal is by June the 1st to have a letter out to all of those clients, letting them know if they can continue to receive the temporary meal through the pandemic funding, or if they will need to transition and start coming to pick up a curbside lunch at the senior centers. We did let the state know in our transition plan, due to the volume of over 800 clients, that it might be beyond that June 1st date for us, just because of that sheer volume, but that's the goal that we're working toward, and that each client will know prior to that. So they're hoping we can let them know when we send out those letters, what will happen at the end of May versus the beginning of June. And then that puts us one step closer to being able to reopen the senior centers. And those curbside clients would then transition back to potentially congregate clients if that's what they choose to do so at that time. And we're learning more all the time from our senior center reopening work group that Jill had mentioned about what that'll look like and what those requirements will be. But this is the first phase of really trying to determine eligibility for all of these temporary clients that we've been able to add on. And we'd also included our ADRC, our toll-free call center number, in that letter. So if they have any questions about it or are confused about it, that they can call in and we'll walk them through that letter and how to complete that and submit back to us for evaluation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. And you do have a copy of that letter in your board packet for your review. And so as you can tell, there are a lot of moving pieces right now to the transition plan and reopening plans. And so as we move forward, we will continue to keep the board updated. And as always, if anyone has any questions or concerns, we will certainly be happy to address those. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask you, you're talking about a transition plan. I guess I'm kind of confused why we're working on a transition at this point of taking those meals out when all the funding is still there to provide home delivery meals. I don't understand. There's even more money than that's been appropriated. So who's driving the transition plan of taking them off of home delivery meals?
Those instructions are coming from the Department for Aging and Independent Living, which is the state unit on aging in Frankfurt. And so the transition plans were developed at their request and submitted to them for their review. And then as we move forward, we're just trying to finish out this fiscal year. We don't have the allocations yet for next fiscal year, but we are aware that there will be some additional funding that's probably going to come our way for those meals. But at this point, the instruction to all of the area agencies on aging is to begin the transition process to identify the COVID meal clients that receive the home delivered meal that may be able to transition to a curbside meal instead of the home delivered meal.
I just wondered who was driving the transition and what was going to happen to that money.
And Mr. Chairman and Mayor, I might also add, and Jill, you know, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but one thing you should know, each month, you know, obviously due to COVID, a lot of the other programs that typically occur, transportation, some of the homemaking programs, some of those other things that typically occur, we're utilizing in some form or fashion to utilize for meals. So each month we're working with Dale, trying to move around a lot of those funds so that we do have enough funding to pay for that number of home delivered meals that's going out on a daily basis. So I think what they're probably thinking, Mayor, is that you know, as more of these other programs start to ramp up, there's probably going to be less and less funds there available for actually home delivered meals. So I'm assuming that's what they're thinking at this point, and why they're they're trying to look at all these other options right now.
And Jason, you are correct. We do have a monthly finance call with the Department for Aging and Independent Living to look at all of our cost categories for all of our services, because we have had to kind of move some funds around to make sure that we are covering the expense of these meals. And in particular, this month, we've already had 2 calls on the finance side with the Department for Aging and Independent Living, just to make sure that we're going to be able to get through the end of this fiscal year and see that those meals are covered. But the transition is at their direction. And of course, as we find out more updates and information, that will come out to the board. But anytime you have a question, I'll be happy to look at that. And if I don't have the answer, then we will get the answer.
And we are continuing to sign up new temporary COVID home delivered meal clients as they call in on a daily basis. For those that meet that criteria, we are still signing up additional clients, and we'll continue to do so.
Yes, and that criteria right now is anyone that's age 60 or over that calls in for a meal, then we're going to go ahead and sign them up for a meal. The transition plan is really to look at who truly needs a home delivered meal and who could go to the senior center and pick it up. Cost of a home delivered meal is more than a curbside meal. And so we are looking at that as well.
All right. Any other questions for Jill or Amanda? All right. Thank you both for your presentation and clarification. Next on the agenda is our community and economic development update. Miss Amy Frogue.
Good afternoon, you all. Excuse me. If you will refer to your board packet, there is a sheet in there titled Loan Review Data Sheet. The first item I have to present to you all is a loan for your consideration. The loan committee did meet on March the 15th to review this loan. The name of the company, I'm going to butcher it, is Navya Puja LLC up in Central City, Kentucky, up in Muhlenberg County. They have submitted a request to us for a loan for $80,000. What this group has done, it's Mr. Jay and Pinky Patel. They've purchased a property up in South Carrollton that was formerly a Phillips Crossroad Market, and they plan to renovate the property and install a canopy and fuel pumps and open a C-store at that location. Again, our $80,000 will be utilized to finance the fuel service equipment. The total project cost in all is $450,000. We will be participating with First Kentucky Bank out of Central City on this project. The project is expected to create an additional 4 full-time jobs, 3 part-time jobs, and will retain 2 full-time and 1 part-time job at that location. The proposed collateral on this loan will be a co-first mortgage on the real estate property with First Kentucky Bank. We will also hold a lien on all furniture, fixtures, and equipment, as well as a personal guarantee from Mr. and Mrs. Patel. This is one of several C-stores that they do operate up in Muhlenberg County, which they've been able to turn those stores around and make them successful. Again, as I mentioned, the loan committee met on March the 15th and approved this loan as presented. So if I don't have any questions from you all, Judge, I would entertain a motion that we move forward with this loan.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the loan as presented?
So moved, Jan Yance.
Thank you, Mayor. Do I have a second?
I'll second it. Scott Marshall.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions or comments regarding the loan? All right, there being none, is anyone opposed to the approval of this loan on behalf of PeADD? All right, there being none, the loan will be approved as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And while we're on the topic of loans, I just wanted to give you all a real quick update from our COVID loan person, Chris Sutton, who's been hitting the streets pretty hard the last few months. To date, we have given a total of 19 loans totaling $469,814 throughout the PeADD region in response to the COVID pandemic. This loan money has been made available, excuse me, over the last 9 months. We do still have an additional $220,000 remaining, but we do have 3 more applications that are currently in process, so that money is dwindling down rather quickly. But the beauty of this is that some of those loans that we did on the initial front end have started their repayment process. So as those payments come back in on a monthly basis, we should be able to build that fund back up to continue to make those loans in response to the pandemic. A couple of other items in your report, you'll have the intergovernmental review report for this month. There were 2 projects on there submitted to the clearinghouse for review, and those have been sent out to those respective county officials for review. Some dates to put on your calendars, just some grant deadline reminders. The Homeland Security Grant Program, that application period ends on April the 23rd, which is next Friday, I believe. Land and Water Conservation Fund and Recreational Trails Program, those applications will be due on May the 31st. And again, the Delta Regional Authority Grant Program that we talked about last month, those applications will be due on June the 6th. If you all have any interest in applying or have questions about those programs, please get with myself or any of the Community and Economic Development staff for more information or for assistance with applying for those programs. One last item, please put April the 27th at 11 o'clock on your calendar. That is going to be our next Regional Transportation Committee meeting. This will be a hybrid meeting in person with a Zoom option to join. This is a pretty important meeting for our region, as we will be selecting projects, road projects to be sponsored for funding consideration in the next statewide road plan. So please put this date on your calendar and attend in person if you can. Again, we will send out a Zoom link if you want to choose to participate in that meeting by phone instead. Do I have any questions on any of this information from you all? If not, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Amy. We'll move on now to our workforce development update and Ms. Sheila Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to bring you a few updates on information that you'll find in your packet and add a few other comments. You all will remember that in the past week, the governor has talked about opening the career centers for UI services, unemployment insurance services, by appointment to the general public. And that process has been released, and individuals have gone online that have unemployment issues and signed up for a series of in-person appointments. Unemployment insurance staff will be the main staff that are moving back in the career centers at this time. Of course, the West Kentucky Workforce Board does not have unemployment insurance as one of its programs, and it will not be staff that will be performing any of those duties, as that is not its role in the career center services. We are assisting with meetings of partners so the partner agencies can understand how those processes and the bringing in of clients there would be able to occur. And then our safety at work outline that we would have all of our staff following that might be in the centers of all the various agencies. So we still have a few tweaks to occur with that this week to make sure that we have a healthy environment as our partners start to return to the career centers. And that's scheduled for most centers to begin work on the 15th. Our affiliate sites would not be involved in that. Our only two comprehensive sites in Paducah and Hopkinsville would be where the in-person unemployment insurance services would be occurring through the labor cabinet. Sites as Madisonville and Muhlenberg County, any of those affiliate sites like that in Murray, there's not unemployment insurance staff that's located there to help anyone. So there will not be any in-person services provided at those sites per the governor's office. It'll just be where the labor cabinet has staff in the comprehensive centers. So we will see how that activity plays out this week, and we'll be working with the other staffs to make that happen. We cannot call a career center. I did want to mention that to you in case someone was saying that to you as the judges and mayors. The unemployment insurance staff through the labor cabinet has decided to not release the phones back to us. And so that same phone protocol of them calling the phones in the career center and being directed to someone in Frankfurt will still be occurring at this time. We've asked for the phones to be released back to us so someone could actually call a center, but that hasn't occurred as of this time. We do have an opportunity to help people report fraud with the unemployment insurance offerings there. And if you go online, you will find a link to report that fraud. And you can help individuals in your community, encourage them to report that. About a third of the process right now is bogged down in fraud. And that is helping to slow the process of helping those individuals that are truly trying to get assistance. The other activities we have going on in our centers now, they're still online, virtual services, career center services that we can reach out to with our customers. We also, as a workforce board, have requested proposals for our direct career center services that are in all of our service delivery sites, the comprehensive centers, as well as the affiliate sites. All of those RFPs, the one-stop operator and the direct services, both of those RFPs are due back to us on April the 26th. There will be a staff review of those, and then we'll be asking some of our local officials and some of our leadership and our board to be a part of that review process. So if you're a CLEO, a chief elected official, then we might be contacting you for your help during the next few weeks after that. We also are in the middle of our collaborative planning process that occurs every 5 years. And in that process, we had a planning meeting last week and had about 40 people online to join us. And we're hoping to get that data together and out there before you. And I'll call on Molly in just a minute, but I did want to reference you to some other data in the packet. We have some labor market information that looks at the latest unemployment data, and you'll find that next in the packet there. So if you can turn to that, if you have questions about that, we'll be happy to answer them offline after the meeting. Molly, I know that you and Julie have been working on the planning process, and it's sometimes a very long and collaborative process that we're dotting a lot of I's and crossing a lot of T's in to make sure we have the policies in place and some of the other examples and suggestions. And I know that some of you all on the line joined us this past week. And so we're happy that you were able to do that. And I think others must agree with me by the voice I hear. So Molly, can you go ahead and make some comments about the planning process?
Sure. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay.
So you'll see if you click on the plan information link in your packet, some of the information that we've provided regarding the local and regional workforce plan. As Sheila mentioned, this is a required DOL planning process. And in our area, we actually team up with Green River Workforce Development Board, and then we do a local and regional 5-year planning process. The state has given us a template that we have to follow and answer questions. It's very cut and dry. As Sheila mentioned, it's not something that you would just, read for light reading on the beach, but it's something that we have to do. Workforce staff worked with Green River to complete a draft of the regional pieces, and we met on the 8th. As Sheila mentioned, it was a virtual meeting between the two boards and our area partners to get some feedback and comments from them on activities or additional information that we needed to add to the draft. And as you'll see from the timeline provided for you, we are continuing to work on those pieces until the 30th, when we'll submit our draft plans for public review. And there will be a 30-day comment period following that, where we'll take any comments that we received and implement those changes into the plan. We also provided you 2 charts from the plan so you can see some of the data and information that we gathered for the region. The first one is a workforce overview report that analyzes the employment by industry and then wages for each industry. And you'll see that government, healthcare, social assistance, manufacturing, and retail trade are the largest regional industries. But there's actually been an increase in the accommodation and food services industry due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Government jobs remain the strongest source of employment for the West Kentucky area, and manufacturing wages are the highest across the board. We've also provided you a chart on the sectors that each local area has identified, and you'll see that there's some overlap on certain ones, such as manufacturing, healthcare, and then transportation and logistics. As you all know, there are many, many jobs in our area that are going unfilled due to people not really looking for work. Reasons for this could include concern about getting the virus. Perhaps they have transportation or childcare issues that are prohibiting them from getting back into the workforce. But it's our job as workforce boards to help our employers fill those slots and then attempt to help our job seekers find self-sustaining employment. So these local and regional plans analyze those employment trends, describe the innovative methods that we're using and then our partners are also using to increase our labor force and then get folks back to work. That's all I had, Sheila. Thanks.
Thank you, Molly. Molly and Julie have done a great effort in that. And also, I'd like to mention, Molly referred to the regional plan and our work with Green River Workforce Board on that. The state of Kentucky designated 5 regions across the state. And our region that we're part of is known as the West region that she referred to. And we are joined with Green River, as Molly mentioned, but that was a choice that was made by the state. And we're unusual in that we have the 2 workforce areas together because there's 10 workforce areas across the state. So in some of the other regions, there are more boards that have been joined together. But that is a requirement as we look at the similarities of the 2 areas as well as the differences that we have within those 2 areas. And that is a part of that plan. But I think Molly covered everything else well for you today. But Mr. Chairman, we'll end the workforce report unless someone else has some comments. We are receiving comments on the plan that we're incorporating now. And then as Molly mentioned, after the 30th, we'll have comments that could be added at that time, but we will wait until the end of the comment period to add anything else after the 30th. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sheila. We'll move on then. On our agenda, our monthly code of ethics report. We've had no infractions or issues with our code of ethics policy, so we'll move right through that to our director's report. And Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of good information today. Hopefully you all soaked every bit of it up. when I'm typically preparing for these board meetings, I always look back at past meetings for a particular month that we're in. And I was quickly reminded when I was preparing for this one that last April was the first meeting that we had canceled due to the pandemic. And at that point, we were just trying to figure out how we were going to operate in the environment that we found ourselves in. And I look back at the past year, and quite honestly, as I'm sure is similar to many of you all, it's mostly just a blur in some cases. But I'm also amazed of the things that our organization has accomplished over the past 12 months. And to this day, for me, it's still hard to wrap my mind around what has taken place over these months. And I'll just say this: I'm super proud of how we've all responded. So thank you all so much for your leadership on that. A couple of things that I did want to mention regarding legislative activities, and it's somewhat been mentioned already, is the infrastructure funding, specifically Senate Bill 36 and then House Bill 320. Last week, the ad directors met with DLG and KIA, Kentucky Infrastructure Authority, about these bills and how that funding was going to be rolled out to local communities. And I appreciate Representative Prunty for sharing the information about the various totals for each county. But I also wanted to pass along some of the information that we learned last week as it pertains to these bills. First, with Senate Bill 36, providing $250 million for water and wastewater projects, these funds will be administered by the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority and will be allocated in the following ways. And this is specifically out of the bill: $150 million based on county population. That's what Representative Prunty was talking about earlier. Now, KIA told us last week that these allocation amounts will be released in the near future. Of course, we know Representative Prunty and probably all of our legislators have those amounts already. It is my understanding that the plan as it stands right now is that local water and wastewater utilities will be making application for these funds directly to KIA. It's not something that's just going to come down to the counties like some of the other stimulus funds have, but all of our local water and wastewater utilities are at this point, the plan is that they will be making application for the funds directly to KIA. Now, again, this may change as the details are still being worked out, and obviously there's lots of questions of how that's all gonna play out. But I will say this: it was told to us that our water management councils will be providing a pivotal role in that process. So we and Kyle and Amy are working on this. If there are projects that we need to get through the water management council process, we're going to start doing that very quickly here to make sure that any project that you all as county judge executives and mayors and other community leaders that want to see happen have gone through all of the processes needed to make sure that they can be eligible for funding. So stay tuned, as there's going to be a lot of information coming out about these funds. 50 million of that 250 million is going to be for unserved areas specifically. So for new connections. So if you have areas that you are wanting to run lines to, that 50 million is going to be specifically for that, and also for areas that are under federal consent decrees. I don't think we have any areas in our district that are under the federal consent decree. And then the last 50 million is just going to be held to supplement the original $150 million for projects that need additional funds. So let me say again, the details are all still being worked out between KIA, Division of Water, the governor's office. So these things may very well change. But note that our staff are definitely keeping eyes and ears on this, and will pass along the information as we receive it. We've been told that a series of trainings will be coming out very soon, and more than likely, the ads will be hosting many of these events. So stay tuned for that. Secondly, House Bill 320, funding for broadband. We did have a short discussion regarding the rollout of the broadband funding made available through House Bill 320. Again, that's the $300 million that's going to be available for public and private projects. KIA is currently, if you recall back from the bill, all those funds are going to run through KIA, and they are currently working on the regs for that program, and they hope to be ironing out all of the details on that in the next couple of weeks. Again, stay tuned, more information. It seems like, based from what we heard, the funding, the mechanism for the water and sewer may be running just a tad bit quicker than the broadband, but it sounds like, as far as the timing is concerned, both of them may be coming out about the same time. What's extremely exciting is that the level of funding that we're talking about is definitely going to be transformative, and I know that a significant number of projects will be completed with these funds. DLG staff also shared that as of right now, planning for the Governor's Local Issues Conference is underway, and right now is currently on the books for August the 25th through the 27th. I'm extremely hopeful that this event, along with others, will definitely take place this year. They told us that obviously they're looking at a number of rules and restrictions that may be in place, that may be put in place by the hotels, but they are trying to work those details out, and looking forward to having that conference later this year. It's also under our understanding that DLG plans to hold trainings as it pertains to the spending of the latest American Rescue Plan dollars. You know, as a reminder, the county funds, they'll be coming directly from the feds. However, city funding will be coming through DLG. And we do understand that DLG will hold these trainings for cities, but counties will be able to listen in as well, and hopefully get some of their questions answered, because I do know we're receiving a lot of questions. I know that many are probably calling KCO, a lot of them calling KLC, NACO, all of the other acronyms about, you know, how can those monies be spent, and what can they be spent on. So I think there's going to be several trainings coming up. So check your emails. We'll be sending information as we receive it. A couple staff members that we'd like to recognize who are celebrating milestones with the organization, and I believe both of them are on with us today. But first, Miss Julie Allen, who serves as our workforce programs coordinator, is celebrating 20 years with PeADD. Julie is responsible for the maintenance of policies at all of our career centers, handles all of our partners at those centers, our youth contractors, and also leads our very important rapid response activities. Secondly, we have Miss Angela Gore, who is also celebrating 20 years with PeADD. Angela serves as the administrative assistant in our aging department. So congratulations to both of these ladies. We appreciate everything that they do, and you can find more information about them in our newsletter. Speaking of our newsletter, you'll find that our April edition is jam-packed full of good information. I would especially draw your attention to the list of awardees of land and water conservation funding. Amy and I were talking last week, and we seem to think that this is probably a record year for our region in terms of funding and the number of projects that we received for funding. So congratulations to all those that received funding, and a big high five to our community and economic development staff helping get these projects funded. Just a couple reminders and announcements. Judge Whitfield has set the next West Kentucky Coalition meeting for May the 13th at 11:30 a.m. And I believe Judge Whitfield is hoping that this can be an in-person meeting. So go ahead and put that on your calendars. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, I would like to remind all of our executive committee members that we will be meeting on April the 20th at noon here at our office in our large boardroom. So again, that's our executive committee, April the 20th here at our office in our large boardroom. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. And unless anyone has any questions, thank you all for your continued support.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Jason? All right. Congratulations again to Julie and Angela. Great milestone, and appreciate y'all's work on behalf of all of us. Is anyone aware of any other business needs to come before the board? All right. There being none, would entertain a motion to adjourn and a second that motion.
So moved. Jan Yance.
Thank you,
Steve Gribble.
Thank you, Judge. Is no one opposed? We'll meet next time at the appropriate time. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, shoot.